My name is Jenny Kim. I'm the Math 30-2 exam manager. Just a little bit about myself. I was a classroom math teacher, mainly in Edmonton high schools for 16 years before I started before I took on this role here in the diploma programs. And my co-presenter over here.
I'm Jessica Handy. I'm the Math 30-1 diploma examiner. I'm on secondment from Edmonton Public Schools. I've been a classroom teacher for about 15 years, spending the last 10 years teaching high school math.
All right, so here's what we're going to be going through today. Just an overview of the purpose and design of all diploma exams, and then we'll show you some support documents of what you can find on our website, and then go through the specific blueprint of the math diploma examination, and we'll give you some details about the written response, as well as how you can help students prepare for a diploma exam and how you can be more involved in our processes here. So before we move on, we're going to just practice a polling feature, and I'll turn it over to Tony. All right, so let's get into diploma exams and why we have them. So Alberta is recognized internationally for its high quality education system, and there are 4 key components that contribute to that success. So first of all, teachers need at least a 4-year university degree. Another component, the program of studies is mandated and clear. Third, we have approved resources that align with the program of studies. And the 4th key component is the focus of our presentation today. We have high quality assessments which link directly to the program of studies. So I'm going to turn it back to Tony again, and we're going to take another brief poll. Well, here it is.
Big reveal.
So the 3 main purposes of diploma exams are to certify the level of individual student achievement. And it is, as most of you said, to ensure that province-wide standards are achieved and maintained. And lastly, to report individual and group results. So that is the intended purpose. Here's a list of all the diploma courses that are available. All of them have an exam in January. Sorry, here are all the courses. And all of them have an exam in January and June, which is considered our major administration, where the majority of the students write their diploma exams. And all of these subjects also offer a diploma exam in April and August, which is called our minor administration. Some high demand diploma courses also have an exam in November. All exams except for ELA, FLA, and Francais are available in both English and French. And we also offer diploma exams in a variety of special formats, such as Braille, large print, colored paper, audio versions, etc. And as you all know, an accommodation that is available to all students is double time, should they need it. Here is the design of specifically the math diploma exam, which consists of 32 machine-scored questions, which account for 75% of the total exam mark, and either 2 or 3 written response questions, depending on the course, which account for the remaining 25% of the exam mark. Each subject bulletin, math subject bulletin, which Jessica will touch on later on, has more detailed details about the blueprint of each diploma exam.
So being prepared for teaching a diploma course, it's essential that teachers prepare themselves to get ready for that before you can prepare your students. So it's necessary to understand the expectations and standards of achievement for the diploma course, as well as to be aware of the rules and procedures for administering a diploma exam. So we have many documents provided by Alberta Education located on our website to support teachers and administrators in doing all of this. Before we discuss these documents in too much detail, Tony will demonstrate how to access these documents on the Government of Alberta website.
If you go to the Alberta government website at alberta.ca, this is the homepage for the Alberta government. If we just scroll down a little bit, if I could get this working, under Education and Training, we click there, then we scroll down again, and we have K-12 education. We click there. And today we're going to be talking about diploma exam courses. So we'll be going into the K-12 provincial assessment section, but I just want to point out the K-12 curriculum and programs of study can be found at this link in the middle of the page, but we're going to go to the provincial assessment section. And under here, we're dealing primarily today with diploma exams. So that's our next link. And then we're at a great point for you to maybe bookmark this page. It's a great jumping off spot for you to find a lot of information about diploma exams in every subject, not just math. So we're going to jump into the writing diploma exams. And we're going to go down and just talk about some of the things that can be found here. So right at the top of the page is a card that has some quick access to some important dates, the diploma exam schedule, our calculator policy, telling kids how MyPass can be worked. Then we scroll down a little bit more and we have the guides for students for all of the diploma courses, not just math. But in the middle, we have our math diploma guide, student guides here. We go down a little further, we have exemplars, students writing, practice questions, and these are expandable menus. So when we go to Math 30-1, we open it up. This is where our assessment standards and exemplars are housed, all of the release documents, and the Math 30-1 written response information documents there as well. Open up the Math 30-2, our documents are there also, our assessment standards, released items, and the written response information. And you can see as we scroll down, all of the other subjects are there if you happen to be teaching one of those as well. The support documents a little further down, there's 3 of them that are math specific. So there's the Math General that relates to both the Math 30-1 and 30-2. So the guide for students, the calculator policy, fact sheets, directing words are all found there. And then items specific to the individual courses. So Math 30-1, we have the information bulletin for them, and they expand the 30-2 one, and there is the Math 30-2 information bulletin. So again, all of these documents are housed under here. And if I just went back up, we can see that this is all under the diploma exam section of the website. And back to Jenny and Jessica.
Thanks, Tony. Before we talk about each document in a little bit more detail, remember that if you have any questions as we're kind of going through, just feel free to enter them into that Q&A section, and Tony will kind of flag us down and let us know. So the first document we're going to talk about is our program of studies. So it's the official document that identifies what students are expected to learn and do in all subjects and grades. So the program of studies for each course contains general outcomes, which are those overarching statements about what the students are expected to learn. We have specific outcomes that identify the specific knowledge, skills, and understandings that students are required to attain by the end of the course. And remember that this is the program that teachers should be following. If you're ever in doubt about what should be covered, this is the document we go to. You may notice with your specific outcomes that they all begin with, it is expected that students will. These students give teachers the information about what students should be able to do in order to meet the program expectations, not what teachers should be doing. Students should be actively involved in the development of their knowledge and skills. Notice the verbs that are used within those specific outcomes. So these can help direct certain learning expectations. As well, each specific outcome has a list of mathematical processes connected with it. And these are the specific processes that students should encounter and use to build understanding of each outcome. The mathematical processes are defined as critical aspects of learning, doing, and understanding mathematics. And they're meant to permeate the teaching and learning of mathematics. The specific definitions for each of these processes can be found in the front matter of your program of studies. And knowing which mathematical processes are listed for each outcome can help to inform not only your instructional activities, but also how you assess these outcomes. So for example, 14 out of the 24 Math 30-1 outcomes do not list technology. Therefore, when we assess, we really shouldn't be expecting or encouraging the use of technology for those outcomes. So recognizing and targeting or not targeting certain mathematical processes can present a unique challenge with machine scored format questions. Here's an example of a Math 30-1 concept written as a multiple choice question. With the question written this way, many students may determine the factor by graphing the function to observe the x-intercepts. Why might this be a problem? So for this outcome, technology is not listed as a mathematical process. If students are using technology to solve this problem, then they're not meeting this outcome. If we assume most students will approach this question from a graphical standpoint, then multiple choice may not be the best format. This question may be better asked as a written response question, or may be written in a way that students are not able to rely on their calculator to get the answer. This demonstrates the benefit of having written response questions, where the use of an algebraic process can be required and student methods can be better observed and understood. Next, we have our assessment standards documents, and these are available for both Math 30-1 and 30-2. And both of these documents have been finalized and archived since 2018, so there's no changes being made to them. These documents are designed to clarify assessment standards, as well as provide exemplars of questions to demonstrate how an outcome could be assessed. The exemplars provided are neither prescriptive nor exhaustive, and the location of this assessment standards document, as well as any released items, can be found in the exemplars examples of student writing and practice questions section on the Writing Diploma Exams webpage, which was that webpage that Tony showed you and encouraged you to bookmark. These program standards were developed and validated by the Diploma branch, curriculum branch, and also by teachers across the province. The assessment standards and exemplars document should be used to give you a good idea of what students will be asked to demonstrate on the provincial exam. Each specific outcome is listed along with individual notes to teachers regarding the expectations related to assessment. For example, in the outcome shown on the screen, this note tells us limitations for what we would ask students, as well as it elaborates on the types of functions students should be able to work with. Assessment standards for both Math Diploma courses include a chart that assists in identifying acceptable and excellent levels of performance. Students at the acceptable level would generally have a course mark between 50 and 79% and should be able to apply their knowledge to familiar problems and contexts. On the other hand, students at the standard of excellence level generally receive a course mark of 80% or higher and should be able to approach a completely unfamiliar question and work through it using the knowledge they have gained. The expectations for acceptable standard and standard of excellence are detailed and listed in conjunction with each specific outcome. For every specific outcome, there's a listing of what types of tasks would be considered acceptable and which ones would be considered standard of excellence. These lists are not designed to be a checklist. The program of studies and our outcomes are much broader than just a set list, but they are meant to act as a guide for teachers about what could be assessed and what standard they would meet. These standards do not always relate to the difficulty of questions, but indicate the type of thinking or understanding that is needed to complete the task. Next, each diploma course has an information bulletin to provide students and teachers with subject-specific information. This document is often updated every fall to reflect any changes or any additional information that teachers might need. For example, in Math 30-1 and 30-2, the information bulletin includes information about blueprinting and exam design, definitions of the math directing words, cognitive levels, and information about the written response scoring guide. Each year, the exam managers also provide a commentary on how students have performed on the exam, including areas of strengths, areas for improvement, and observations from the written response component. The calculator policy can also be found on that Writing Diploma Exams webpage, as well as there's a link to it in the General Information Bulletin. This calculator policy is reviewed and updated every year, and this document provides a list of approved graphing calculators, as well as a list of prohibited functions. It's important to examine any scientific calculator that students are using to make sure that they cannot perform prohibited functions. For example, many scientific calculators can find exact values of radicals, as well as determine exact values of trigonometric ratios. The calculator policy contains a list of prohibited scientific calculators. However, this list is not exhaustive. It would be impossible to keep track of all the different calculators that are coming out. So it's important to look for those prohibited functions. The calculator policy also includes rules for use on any math or science diploma exam, as well as clearing instructions for each model of graphing calculator that teachers should be the ones clearing before and after exams. Although this calculator policy is good for diploma exams, it may be a good idea to share this information with all teachers in your department and begin enforcing this in grade 10. Finally, we have our general information bulletin, which contains all information pertaining to diploma exams. While most of the previous subject-specific documents can be found on the Writing Diploma Exam webpage, the GIB is found on the Administering Diploma Exams webpage. Tony, can you show us where that document is and open it up so we can see the table of contents?
For sure. So if we go back to the diploma exam page, instead of going into the writing diploma exam section, as we previously did for all those documents, we're going to go into the administering the diploma exam section. So if we click there, the first thing you'll see is the GIB, or the General Information Bulletin. Now this is a very big bulletin. When we go in, and we'll open it up. Just slowly loading. So here's the General Information Bulletin. It's a good idea if you're ever going to check this, or if you just go to Google it sometimes, make sure that it's the right date, because of, as Jessica has mentioned, that this is updated annually. So make sure you're in the right school year. So in the GIB, if we scroll down, we can see the table of contents. Now, there are 5 pages of table of contents. So as you can tell, it's a lengthy document, but each one of these links in this document, or sorry, each one of the headings in the document here are actually live links. But before we go into one of these, I just want to point out that the General Information Bulletin, it is an essential document for all administrators or any person that's actually responsible for organizing or administering the diploma exam in your school. But that being said, it still contains a lot of useful information for you as a classroom teacher, including significant dates, the information about marking sessions, calculator policies, and just general rules and procedures related to diploma exams. So for instance, if you were in the GIB and you wanted to see when the diploma exams are for June 2020, you can just click on that table of contents item and you can see it takes you right to the page that you need to look at. So that's that, and we'll send it back to the desk.
Thank you, Tony. And I just want to reiterate that the information bulletin and the calculator policy are looked at annually. So anything that's new in those documents will be indicated. So maybe get in the habit of looking at those in the fall of every year. So we're going to take some time to look at the specifics of the math diploma exams. So as previously mentioned, the definitions of the cognitive levels can be found in the information bulletin. And we're just going to go through what the definitions of the cognitive levels. So we blueprint our diploma exams based on balancing specific outcomes within each topic and the assessment standards, but we also look at balancing these 3 cognitive levels. And the definition in math, it refers to the different cognitive loads associated with questions or tasks in the program of studies. Throughout the course, you want to look at all 3 levels to be present in the work you do with students, in the classroom work as well as in their assessments. So our lowest cognitive level is procedural. The definition there, students use recognition, execution, or verification of appropriate procedures. So these are common questions that students have done maybe several times within the course. They read the question, they know exactly what to do, they carry out a procedure. So we often refer to it as rote memory questions. Then we have our conceptual level of understanding, where students demonstrate that they can go beyond recall of definitions and recognition of common examples. They can use and or explain the underlying concepts. So this is a higher cognitive explanation, and we say the big ideas. And our highest cognitive level, problem solving, where students demonstrate they can adapt and extend the mathematics they know. They can use strategies to solve totally unique and unfamiliar problems. So often we hear from students when they write one of our questions, they say, we've never done this before. We've never seen this before in class. And that is exactly the purpose of that question. It's unique, it's new, but they're taking the knowledge that they've learned throughout the course and they're applying it to this new scenario. So That is our highest cognitive level. And we just want to point out that problem solving doesn't necessarily mean that it is a word problem or a context-based problem. It's just unique and unfamiliar. Getting into the blueprints of each math diploma exam course. So we've already talked about the question format. And just to give you historically, blueprints for all diploma exams are determined after having discussions with colleagues in curriculum. And we also have numerous consultations with external stakeholders throughout Alberta before these are determined. So our blueprint also contains a breakdown of the topic. So the 3 topics in Math 30-1 and the percentage range of how much will be covered on the diploma exam. So you'll notice it's a range because we need the flexibility in order to select our WR items. And you can see the majority of the emphasis is on relations and functions, which is the majority of the course. And then we have our 3 cognitive levels. So the coverage on the diploma exam emphasis, 30% procedural, 34% conceptual, and 36% problem solving. So this is a blueprint in which we design and develop each diploma exam every administration. And just to talk briefly about the written response question design. So the purpose of the written response component is to complement the machine scored portion of the exam. So it provides students with the opportunity to demonstrate their understanding of the concepts by communicating their thought processes and solution strategies mathematically. So in other words, we want the students to show us, can they do the math? Each question consists of 2 parts in Math 30-1. And it will cover one or more specific outcome. Normally it's 1 or 2, but it has a potential to cover more than 2 specific outcomes. As well, it will always address multiple cognitive levels. You will never get an entire written response component being procedural. We need that balance of 30%, 34%, 36%. And not all questions have a standard of excellence part. Some questions have 2 parts at the acceptable level. As the exam is designed to be completed in 2.5 hours, the written response items are developed so that students should be able to complete each question in about 7 to 10 minutes. And then each question is worth a total of 5 marks. So one part will be 2 marks and the other part will be 3 marks. And that does change from question to question. So it is specified in the exam itself. Now taking a look at Math 30-2 Diploma Exam Blueprint. So again, we've gone through the question format, but this time 30-2 has 2 written response items. And here is our topics, the breakdown of the topics. So again, same thing, relations and functions is the largest topic. So therefore you see the greatest weighting or emphasis. And then cognitive level emphasis is exactly the same as Math 30-1. In Math 30-2, purpose of the written response is exactly the same. We want to give the students the opportunity to show us their math understanding. So each written response question consists of 4 parts. And that first part is considered an entry-level question. It gives something for the students to sink their teeth into. And it's designed to be a straightforward entry point into the rest of the written response question, allowing most students to find success and thereby willing to continue on to the rest of the written response parts. Each written response question is worth a total of 7 marks. And the value of each part is not indicated in Math 30-2 since it never changes. So please share this with your students. So part A, that entry-level question, is always worth 1 mark, and the remaining 3 parts are always worth 2 marks each. It will never change. In the design of the written response, we also assess multiple specific outcomes. We will always cover more than 1 specific outcome. And sometimes we also cover more than 1 topic within the question. So you might have 2 parts in relations and functions and 2 parts in probability. So we also go cross-topic. And it will always cover and address multiple cognitive levels. And at least 1 of the 4 parts will be a standard of excellence. So And with the written response, if you go through the program of studies and read the outcomes, many of our outcomes say solve problems or represent data to solve problems, which is why our written response questions involve a context around which we ask a number of questions, each covering different outcomes. Now, when scoring our written response, we have the general scoring guide, and this is also in the information bulletin. So the 1 mark part used only by Math 30-2 for the entry level question. And then we have a 2 mark part used by both Math 30-2 and 30-1. So we use this general scoring guide to develop specific scoring guides for each diploma exam question. So these specific scoring guides are developed based on those definitions that you see, those descriptors you see there. So a benchmark score of 1, we look at how does that relate to the question, specific question on this particular exam. So what do the students have to show in their response to demonstrate a basic mathematical understanding in order to show a partial solution? And then we do the same thing for a benchmark score of 2. What has the student done to show a complete mathematical understanding and a clear and complete correct solution to reach that benchmark score of 2? And then the 3 mark general scoring guide used by Math 30-1 only. So if a student's response doesn't meet the performance level of a benchmark score, then we have augmented scores of 0.5, 1.5, or 2.5, which can be awarded. The specific scoring guide for benchmark scores are refined and augmented scores are developed during every marking session. Now, after all the exams have been marked and completed, stakeholders will receive detailed reports about student performance and major administration. There's 3 types of reports: a school authority report, a school report, and an instructional group report. All tables are the same in these reports, but the school and instructional group reports will have additional information about the students' results. We're going to just briefly go through a few of these tables in the reports to give you an idea of what information is provided. But this is going to be a quick overview. So if you're interested in getting more information on how to interpret your results, we suggest talking to your colleagues or administration. Or there's also an interpreting results presentation you may request through your consortium. So we're going to skip to table 5. This is what you're going to see in your report, which illustrates the breakdown of student performance on the machine scored and written response items. So you'll notice you're going to see a column for the provincial results, and then you'll see your school results or your individual group results, which is your classroom. Table 6 shows the student performance and blueprint information for each written response item. So teachers will be able to see how students perform on the entire written response question, as well as each part of the item. So this is an example from Math 30-1, and you'll see that it is item 3, meaning written response question 3 on the exam. There is a raw score total out of 5. And you'll see again the province, the results of the province, and then the results of your school. And then below is the breakdown for each part. And you'll notice the not applicable for part B, which means part B was out of 2 marks and part A was out of 3 marks. And then also the blueprint for this question for each part. And here's an example for Math 30-2. Item 1, so it's written response 1. Raw score total is out of 7. 4 parts, and again, part A is always out of 1 mark, so that's why you'll see the not applicable there in the table. And then the blueprint for each part in terms of topic, specific outcome, and cognitive level. Now, table 7 provides the results for the machine scored items only, not the entire exam. So it consists of 2 parts. So table 7.1 at the top consists of the breakdown of topic and cognitive level. And then table 7.2 consists of the breakdown of student performance and item descriptions for each machine scored item. So as you can see for question number 1, you'll see the provincial average, how your students did in the school, and then the topic, cognitive level, and then the description of that item. So remember, this table is the blueprint for just the machine scored and not the entire exam. As previously mentioned, the school and instructional group report contains a breakdown of individual student performance on different components of the exam. So this is called the instructional group report. So the top left of this table contains a legend and breakdown of the maximum scores for each component of the exam. So this is an example for Math 30-1. You're going to see the breakdown for multiple choice, numerical response, and written response. However, you're going to see that the written response is out of 30 marks, when in actuality, it's out of 15. You have 3 written response questions out of 5 marks each. This is due to limitations with our software. So the score had to be doubled for reporting purposes only. So doubling, but don't worry, doubling this value does not impact the final exam mark, as the final exam score is calculated on the weighted average of that test component. So remember, it's still at a 25%, or weighted at 25%. And then this is just to show you, you're going to see the same thing for Math 30-2, 24, 8, and then 28 marks for the written response, when it's in actuality, it's 14. It was just doubled. The top right of this table contains a legend and a breakdown of the maximum scores for each WR part of the exam. So that will change for Math 30-1, since the 2-part and 3-part questions will change and alternate. So question dependent. Whereas Math 30-2, it will always be 1, 2, 2, 2. And then the bottom half of this table contains the individual student breakdown by item format, and then by topic, and then of course by each part of the written response question. So you'll see that result for every student in your class. So this is just to give you a brief overview of the reports.
So just to clarify, Jenny, too, these reports only come out for January and June.
That is correct.
Those are our major writing sessions.
Yes.
All right. So how do we prepare our students now for these diploma exams? We know some of the documents available for teachers to get them ready. We know what to expect as far as interpreting those results after students write the exam. But now to get students ready. First thing I would recommend showing them is the guide for students. There's a general subject information for mathematics, the sciences, and then one for each of the 4 humanities courses. And so the guide for students can be found under the support documents on that Writing Diploma Exams webpage. And it includes information for students about preparing for the exam day procedures, using calculators, talks about the types of questions and information about how to answer questions, how do you bubble in your numeric response, what you can and cannot bring into the exam. It's especially beneficial for those nervous or anxious students who may feel comfortable reading this and helping them feel prepared themselves. And students like to know what to expect when they're going into this major exam. When thinking about, in general, you're teaching and preparing students for their diploma, remember that it's not just about teaching for the test, but about teaching to the standards of the program. We don't want you to focus on trying to teach students how to do specific questions, but think about what level do they need to be able to understand concepts. Math is not a spectator sport. Learning math involves doing math and making connections with their prior knowledge. As skills are mastered, students can continue to build on those skills by exploring new and unfamiliar problems. In Math 30-2, there's a focus on problem solving and applying learning to new contexts. So students will benefit from the opportunity to try new contexts and problems, so they aren't shocked when they see these new types of things on the diploma. In Math 30-1, it's important to allow students to build connections between units. Asking questions that use concepts or skills learned in previous units can help build those connections and refresh student memories throughout the course. We know that questions can contain more than one outcome, so it may be beneficial for students to see how outcomes can tie together and be connected in that big picture. Avoid treating each outcome as a separate entity. As Jenny discussed previously, less than a third of the diploma exam is made up of procedural questions. So try and be aware if you're only asking students to perform procedural actions. Think about how you can encourage students to develop a deeper understanding of these outcomes. Working with functions in a more generalized form, using letters or symbols instead of just numbers is a way to encourage students to start to think conceptually rather than going through the motions of just doing the procedure. Working backwards is another technique that allows students to problem solve. For example, if a question usually asks for the domain and range of a function, try turning it around, do it backwards, and start by giving the domain and range and asking for an equation of a particular function that might meet those restrictions. The graphing calculator, it's a powerful tool. If students are only learning the keystrokes on how to get an answer, then they're probably not mastering the mathematics. We don't want students to just be skilled at following those procedures, but we want them to kind of develop a deeper understanding of concepts. So provide students with the opportunity to use their calculator as a supportive tool, but don't always allow students to rely on their calculator for everything. Give them those opportunities to not be allowed to use their calculator. Finally, helping students prepare for the expectations of written response can be very helpful. Written response questions provide students the opportunity to communicate their mathematical understanding. Markers will do their very best to find everything in that student's response, but please communicate to your students to show their work as clearly and legibly as possible. Remind students that there are tear-out pages that they can plan and do rough drafts if they feel like they need some space to do some messy work. But then they can transfer their work into the exam booklet. No marks is given to any work that's done on those tear-out pages. So it's really important that students know that they need to show and write all their work in that exam booklet. Anything they cross out won't be marked. So be very careful about what they cross out and don't cross out. And please make sure they know not to write their name anywhere inside the exam booklet.
And if they don't cross work out, remember that is all going to be taken into consideration when we mark the response.
Yeah. It's important that students are able to communicate mathematically. So that means using correct terminology and notation, including appropriate calculations, formulas, units of measurement. Students are able to receive partial marks, so it's advantageous for them to communicate their process and show all of their supporting work. And these are all habits that you can kind of keep those expectations in your classroom as well, and then it's not something that's as new or different to do on the written response diploma. When they're doing their written response, it's important to know your mathematics directing words, which are located under the support documents on the Writing Diploma Exams webpage. So these are meant to assist with understanding the requirements of each written response question. For example, they guide the development of the specific scoring guide for each question and give direction to what markers will be looking for in those student responses. If these directing words are used in the written response question, they'll always be bolded. Other verbs can be used, such as state, write, identify, that are not part of the directing words list. So they'll still be used in questions, but they won't be bolded. You should be aware of the expectations of these directing words. Share those expectations with your students. Use these same expectations in your classroom. And using them within your own assessments and activities can help reinforce their definitions and expectations. Some of the most common directing words that we use that show up on exams are algebraically. Often we pair it with algebraically determine or algebraically solve. And this means that students need to use an algebraic procedure that includes the use of symbols and variables to show their work and how to get the answer. The use of technology would not be accepted as algebraic work. We also have compare, which means to identify similarities and differences of key characteristics or features. And this includes providing evidence of what those actual characteristics are. Determine means that you need to show work. Showing work is how the solution was obtained. It doesn't necessarily have to be algebraic work. It could be, but it needs to be communicating how they thought through it. We have sketch, which means providing a drawing or a graph that shows key features of that graph or function, either by labeling those key features, or they need to be just very clear and evident on the graph. Justify, especially common in Math 30-2, means provide supporting reasons or evidence as to why a decision is what it is. So when you justify, that means your response should go beyond simply showing work. It needs to provide a convincing mathematical argument for why a statement is true. And then in Math 30-1, a big one that we have is prove versus verify. So it's especially common when working with trigonometric identities. Students should recognize what the difference between proving an identity is and verifying an identity, and know when they should be using algebraic steps versus when they should be plugging in angles and working in exact values. Both Math 30-1 and 30-2 have numerous released materials found on the Writing Diploma Exams webpage. Math 30-1 has 4 documents of released items, including the full January 2019 Form 1 exam, which also includes 3 written response questions. Math 30-2 also has 3 documents of released items, including the full January 2019 exam, which has 2 written response questions on it. Both of these released exams include sample solutions and scoring guides for the written response questions. All of the machine scored released items are blueprinted and include the difficulty of the item, so the percentage of students which got the question correct, and the specific outcome, cognitive level, and standard for that question. There's also a separate document specific to written response information for each course. This document includes sample questions, examples of student responses, and explanations of how the responses would be scored using the included scoring guide. All of these documents are available on the website to provide students and teachers the opportunity to see examples of how different outcomes could be assessed, what procedural, conceptual, and problem-solving questions look like, and assist in understanding the expectations for written response questions. We also have Quest A+, which is our current website for accessing digital material, such as practice tests, digitally released items, as well as this is where you would go to write secured digital field tests. Currently, both Math 30-1 and Math 30-2 have multiple choice and numeric response questions available on Quest A+. Lastly, it can be beneficial to review with students how to read their reported scores after they write their diploma exam. So for math only, the student's result statement contains 2 things: the total exam mark, which is shown up as a percentage, as well as a raw score mark for the written response component. The 2 marks will likely not be the same because the written response is weighted as 25% of the exam. Also notice that the written response portion is, in this case, in this example, is out of 30, which Jenny explained earlier. It's really out of 15, but for our software, we need to double it. So that's why it's reported out of 30. And being able to see a separate written response score apart from what their total exam mark works out to be can help students decide how they want to approach their next decision if they're unhappy with their mark, if they want to retake the course, if they want to rescore, or if they just want to rewrite the diploma exam.
All right, and then our last section of this presentation is how you can be involved as a teacher. So the work we do in the diploma branch cannot happen without the involvement of classroom teachers. So we start with item development. So we bring in teachers to write those questions for us. All the way to field testing, we put together the field test, but then we ask teachers to come and review them. And then you as teachers volunteer your students to write those field tests. And then after we get those results, we build the diploma exam, but we bring in teachers to validate those diploma exams. Then those exams get translated, and we bring in French teachers to validate the French translation. So as it says on your screen, teacher involvement is essential at every step of the assessment development process. This is quite literal. So being involved in any of these working groups will provide opportunities to connect with other teachers from across the province. So the call for nominations for diploma exam working groups are sent out at the beginning of each school year. So it's already gone for this year, of course, and there was a deadline on it, and it has passed, but you still can have your name put forward to us. So just through the proper channels. So we welcome you to provide your name to your principal or superintendent, who will provide the name to us, your name to us. I see that we have a question coming in, Tony.
We do. We have a question from one of our participants that's saying, if a student does rewrite the diploma exam, how is their final course mark determined?
It is the final course mark?
Well, that's what they're asking.
Or like
would
the
take-
blended mark?
The blended mark would be the total of the classroom mark and the total of the diploma exam, whatever the rescore mark does stand, whether it's higher, lower, or doesn't change. So that mark in combination with the classroom mark.
And if you rewrite the diploma exam, we always take the best of the best. So if you retake the course and rewrite the diploma, we would take your best course mark and we would take your best diploma mark. And that's what would show up on your transcript.
Great. And the final way to get involved, of course, is marking. All the marking is done by you as the teachers. So marker nominations typically go out every semester. So for semester 1, late September, early October, and then for semester 2, late February, early March. So I believe the nominations for this June marking session has gone out already. If you haven't seen it, just give it a little time. It'll probably make their way down to you.
I think the deadline is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Oh yes, March 27th.
But to be eligible for marking, you do have to have some experience teaching the course for a couple of semesters.
Yeah. So if this is absolutely your first time, just give it a couple of years, and then we hope to see your name on the list.
Sign up for some field tests, and we'll see you at marking in a couple of years.
Field testing. So field testing is essentially testing our test questions before it gets on a diploma exam. So it is an essential step in the development of fair, valid, and reliable provincial exams. So field tests provide students and teachers with examples of the style and content of questions that may appear on the provincial exams. So I don't know how many times I've used it when I was in the classroom to give kids a wake-up call, essentially. So, and then the student reaction is one of two: either, oh, okay, I feel comfortable, I'm good, or geez, I better start studying.
Yeah.
So field tests do provide that opportunity for you to have those conversations with your students as well. So to find all information about field tests, you can go to the link shown on the page there, and it goes directly to the teacher participation in provincial assessment section on our website. And what you can find in this program guide is how you can register for a field test, the registration deadlines, along with the administration deadlines, because there is a deadline for paper field test, especially because it does need to be sent back to us, and then we mark it during the marking session. And then these are potentially future diploma exam questions. So field test security is important to us. And we ask that you use the same security procedures as you would for a diploma exam. And any questions that you have about field tests can go directly to the exam administration branch at field.test@gov.ab.ca. Or you can ask us and we will direct you to the people who can answer your questions. So field test opportunities for Math 30-1 and 30-2 specifically, we have paper year-end field test, which contain both machine scored and written response questions. But we also have digital year-end field tests, which only have the machine scored questions. And in Math 30-2, we also have digital topic field tests. So if you want to have a midterm with just relations and functions, we offer that, as well as a combination of logical reasoning and probability together. the deadlines for requesting a field test. Digitally, it is just 5 business days prior to your preferred field test administration date. And for paper field test request deadlines, you should refer to the field testing program guide every year because it is posted in there. And for this semester, just an FYI, it is April 24th if you do want to and have time to administer a field test to your students this year. So remember that you are not alone in this process. Talk to other teachers in your school or division. Many are so happy to help you and share materials with you. As well, feel free to contact us with any questions you may have throughout the semester. If we can't answer them, we can certainly provide contacts to you. Yeah, absolutely.